This sounds like we're back now. Welcome to the Monday morning show. Hey, for all of you getting here, it wouldn't be a Monday morning show if I didn't have to unplug this Yeti microphone that this computer somehow forgets when it goes to sleep and plug it back in. Welcome to, it is the 27th of January, 2025, and we've made it almost until the end of the month. First month done, 11 to go. If it's your first time watching one of these shows, these are produced by the patrons, the lovely people who make GMG possible. No, I don't make ad revenue. I make almost nothing in ad revenue. Why? Because no one gives a shit about stuff that's not Games Workshop, or the random dramas of the internet. So this is all because of Patreon. So if you're not on Patreon, you haven't attended one of these before, this is our weekly show where we hang out. We talk about the news of the week, what's been going on inside the industry, what's happening as far as like releases or mergers or acquisitions, what the future may hold for certain games companies or whatever, and basically just break down what's been going on in our own hobby lives too. There is going to be another future show version of this, which I'm working on for painting and hobbying stuff. It's going to start happening on Saturdays. But for now, this and the Indie Hour, which happens every Wednesday, are the two sort of behind the scenes things. If you watch the Indie Hour, it is a patron-produced show where they pick a game, I pair it with another game, and we look through various independent, interest agnostic, and self-published titles. Of course, this one's more of like a general concept show. So let's jump into the chat, see who's here. We are still doing, this rolls over from the last episode. We're still doing a fundraiser to basically, force Chris and Jay from Lords of War Games and Hobbies to play Trench Crusade because everyone thought that would be funny. And so that was just a thing that happened last time. And we're $250 of the way to $1,000 there, to make it happen. So yeah, if you want to kick in on that, I have so many things over them. That I can make that happen. It will be great. So what's going on in the chat? Who we got? Oh my gosh, yeah. Do we? Mike's already talking about things that are in my area of interest. Ryan Dunphy's here. Jez Hunt's here. Mike Grimshaw's here. This is the usual suspects. Ellen Nadal's here. Jez Hunt's here. Sam Moore's here. Gene Dean is here. We got lots of people in the mailbag. These are all patrons so far in the chat, which is fantastic. Let's see what we can see outside of that. I'm pretty sure I set this to public, didn't I? I'm like 99% sure I did. So let's just have a look at that. There's not as many people here as typically are. So it could just be that it's at a weird time as well. But I'm 99% sure that I set this to public. Didn't I? But yeah, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different things, including Mike Grimshaw's first question was, did everybody see the trailer for Alien Earth? We did Grimdark Media on Alien Romulus, which was one of my favorite movies of last year. Jay wanted to like it, but then didn't like it as much because Jay's tolerance for like internet meme shit isn't as high as mine. But FX is doing an Alien TV show where the aliens get on Earth, and I'm pretty excited about it, if I'm being honest. I think that's going to be pretty cool. Oh yeah, it's also the 10th anniversary of GMG this week. Hey, there we go. We're 10 years old. Yeah, who cares? This just means I'm old. That's all it means. It's set to unlisted. Well, that's why. Fuck. Let's just get this to public. I definitely set it to public in the creation of it, and now it should be public, and we're live. Perfect. Okay. Well, it was just patrons for a second, and now it should be everybody. So we're going to start off by going through into the whatchamacallit, the chat, seeing how everybody's doing. Then we're going to jump into the mailbag, take some questions from the mailbag, and then questions from the public. So, what we got going on here in the chat? Brian, she says, bon anniversaire. Thank you, Brian. And then Jazz says, happy decadiversary. That's pretty cool, too. Just got the notification on my phone. I'm live. Okay, perfect. That just means that they didn't see the mic gaff, which is perfect. The universe is aligned the way it should be. Yes. So first thing in the chat, talking about Alien Earth. I do hope they do Alien Earth War. Alien Earth War. I have the novels and the Dark Horse comics for that. They were both like unreasonably horny, which was like a thing in the 90s. I don't know why that had to be a thing, but it was. But the Earth War comics are actually really good, and they follow like a colonial marine. They basically follow like what if Hicks and Newt survived somewhere off Alien 3 and become like a thing and like start just like hunting aliens and start to stop like beating up the Wayland Yutani folks that are trying to keep the aliens like under wraps and doing things. So yeah, here we go. Let's jump in the mailbag real fast. Yeah, Jeanine says it was unreasonably grimdark. It was a very like they killed off people constantly. That was the thing in like Dark Horse comics back then, was because they were like the anti-superhero comics, and especially because they were dealing with like Terminator and Alien. They did a RoboCop comic too, which is super weird. And then they had their even weirder imprint, which was Vertigo, which is where like the really truly like dark shit went. Like Black Orchid and Swamp Thing, and of course Sandman. Yeah, the whole like well, sorry, Thomas Robinson says, to be fair, horror was unreasonably horny from like the 80s to the 2000s. The exploitation stuff of the 70s and 80s for sure was, but that was because it was like horror didn't know what it was back then. It was because it was like horror before that was like gothic horror. But then the slasher genre made like horror a little bit more punk. And then you had like Return of the Living Dead, which was just all punk, which like, yeah, part of my awakening as a man was trash from Return of the Living Dead. So that's a whole ass thing. And GD, yeah, they did do crossovers. They did Predator versus Dread. They did Alien versus Superman. Remember that one where Superman gets implanted with an alien embryo, but it can't break out because he's too indestructible, so it's just in him, and they have to like figure out a way to get the alien out because it can't actually hurt him and come out. It's an insane thing. And then yes, Robert Eggers is bringing that back. They just announced the next Robert Eggers like horror movie, which is Werewolf, which I think is going to be really exciting. They're doing like a Dark Ages like Gothic era werewolf one, which I think is pretty exciting. All right, let's jump in and talk about how the week has been, what's been going on. So obviously, if you guys hadn't seen my reviews this past weekend, I reviewed the new Eldar book, which was a whole thing. We have the like the new Phoenix Lords that came out, which are pretty cool. And I was interestingly like torn on this because for one thing, obviously the miniatures are incredible. Like that new Lycus, the new like Warspider Exarch is fantastic. But this is the end of an era. And I love that they actually did an article on this on Warhammer Community talking about like some things that basically they had to do. They had to make like these, you know, effectively an homage to the Jez Goodwin miniatures. Like the Jez Goodwin miniatures had been around for so long. They're so iconic. They were basically trying to update them into like a new era, right? So all of them, it's interesting they did hand swaps. Like for some reason, Azerman is left-handed now. Fugan is also left-handed now with his fire axe, which I think is really interesting. They just flipped them. Everybody got a left to right arm swap. So like Baroth is now right-handed but left-handed for his gun. It's very weird that they just swapped all the sides. And then obviously Lycus is the new Warp Spider Exarch, who's pretty cool. This is kind of, I don't know if this is kind of a retcon, but one of the old implications of Drazar was that Drazar was actually the Warp Spider Exarch and that Karandras and Drazar had beef. There's kind of like a weird, like there was like an implication that one of the Phoenix Lords went bad and went with the Dark Eldar and that Karandras might be that one because he's kind of a mantis, which is different from obviously a spider, but like he had that like insectoid look to him. And I wonder if that was at one point the plan, but then they made Lycus just to like even it out. And maybe there'll be like some kind of mantis theme, like the Incubi are kind of like the mantis themed Aspect Warrior shrine that were in there. So yeah, I feel good about this. It's just, it kind of is sad. I wonder how the chat feels about this because it is really the end of an era. These older sculpts were kind of the last holdouts. I guess the Falcon technically still is, and the Fire Prism. Is the Fire Prism in plastic now? I might be wrong. I just remember the Fire Prism being in metal and like the turret being way too heavy. But I know the Falcon Grav Tank is probably, because they redid the jet bikes. I think they redid the Viper as well. I think that would put the Falcon at like oldest model kit still in production. Because it's old. The Falcon Grav Tank is an old plastic kit, but it still hands up because it's a you know, anything that's designed by Jez Goodwin is a stands the test of time miniature basically. It is really interesting, though, that the general design of all the armor and stuff like that is pretty much the same, right? Like the way the plating works, the way the little embossed parts for the soul stones work. Because these are all soul stones. These all these little like bits on them are supposed to be like embedded soul stones. So if they die, their soul doesn't get like leached into Slaanesh. which I think is interesting. So yeah, I was curious about what the chat thought about this because I really enjoyed doing the review for it, but at the same time, I just like, I feel weird that like those miniatures are gone. You know what I mean? It's like when they resculpted Ragnar Blackman and I was like, oh, what's left? Like how many Jezgo miniatures are still in there? Which I think is really interesting. So what do we got for the chat? Atragonek says, finally some left-handed equity. I feel seen at last. It's just weird. Like, I get reimagining it, but it's just a weird thing to like flip the pose and put the swords in like different hands. I thought was kind of strange. Thomas Robin says, I always thought Drazar was the first Scorpion one and Kranis was the second. That's entirely possible too. They were always like intentionally vague about it because that's back in a time where they didn't really... And I think this is like a powerful lesson for Games Workshop because this is like a thing that obviously the Marvel universe has run into. The more you explain, the more you have to maintain, if that makes sense, right? The more detail you give about a universe, the more you have to keep all those plates spinning to keep people happy because fans are going to audit everything you make. Like literally everything you make. You have no choice. They're going to hold your feet to the fire for any detail you miss or any like inconsistencies. And so I do think there's something powerful about that 90s to 2000s era of literature inside the IP for Games Workshop because it was written in such a way where it was, and this was intentional, it was designed to be inspiration candy for people to express themselves into the hobby, right? So it would always trail off with, but there are many more planets like it, there are many more Space Marine chapters like it, and you will not be missed, kind of an ideology so that you felt unshackled to buy your model kits, convert them however you wanted them to be, and then like have like this plethora of options, then express what you've made. And kind of the joy of the Games Workshop hobby back then was you creating your own little corner of this intentionally vague universe that you then get to populate with your characters and their stories and stuff like that, and the games would go and they'd represent that. And I do think that Games Workshop has to kind of labor under their own success and their own need to make all the detail in there, if that makes sense, right? Like fill it all in and then be held accountable for it too, because the more people write, the more people have to like maintain that stuff. And there's kind of a joke now. I saw this meme on the internet this past week actually in like a Games Workshop like story Facebook group or something like that. And it was just somebody posting like the covers of all of these started series from Games Workshop novels that never got finished. So like they like dropped off after like one or two books because the book sales weren't great, so they never finished them. And it's really funny how some just went forever. Like the Soul Drinkers went forever, and I do not know why the Soul Drinkers went forever. There's a lot of debate about the Soul Drinkers, just from like a fluff point of view. They are all over the place. But some like interesting premise, like kind of under-marketed stories, like didn't really go anywhere at the end of it all. So yeah, it does feel like the end of an era, and that's okay. Like things can end, and I'm fine with things ending. I think the sculpts are I think the job was fantastic. It's just kind of interesting how it signifies something for me. Like it resonates for me that those things are ending. John Ashley Smith is here. Hey, Ash, from the QEW, have that Infinity tournament go up. So I saw John at Torchlight Games and Hobbies last weekend when I went to support Greg, who's been in here many times to play Infinity. He's running Winter War. He's taken over the Tactical Awareness like tournament series. And we got to go to the gaming center called Torchlight, which is like, it's in like the Dunder Mifflin building. It's in like a business office park and is a huge space. And we caught up for a minute and I was playing in that event. And actually I almost won the event. But Alan, who was my opponent, actually ended up winning it because I could not beat this one model in a room. The final mission was a game called Panic Room, where you had to take a room at the end of the game. And the difference between me taking the room and not taking the room was basically the flip of like 8-3 his way to 8-3 my way. And I had a chance. I had one activation left. I had one order left. And my choices were either dodge into the room, and I had a 55% chance of doing that on a D20. So it was 11 or less on a D20 for me to be able to dodge in the room, and then I win. Or walk into the room completely, gunfight, and I had 3 dice on 16s versus 1 dice on 17. And so the math told me to go for it. And he high diced me and won. So and the odds were in my favor, but the universe wanted him to win the tournament, and so it gave it to him. And my model died, and I filled my save, and that was it. He took the tournament, so it went really well. We had a great time. Venue was fantastic. Greg did a great job running it. As much as I like shit talk him because it's my purpose in life. And for the first N5 tournament, where we're also, it's funny because today, one of my news items for today is that the new ITS document just dropped for Infinity, and we're going to go over that too. But that was the last like old ITS one, so they had to. It's a bit awkward because it's using language from N4 in all of the scenarios, and you have to play basically missions that are from the wrong game and sort of interpret them and understand them into the new game. So, but we got off without a hitch, and everybody's a good time. We hadn't seen each other for most of us. There's 20 of us or something like that. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, so it was really good to have everybody get together and do it again. And it was great to meet you, John. Other comments from the chat, and then we're going to do mailbag, and then we're going to do new ITS. Gene Dean says, what I got was that the Eldar are actually the truest form of 40k. Like, that's the iconic faction. Malev says it's an update that honors the original design instead of having to tiptoe around old designs, making things that are not replacements, but also are. And Gene says midichlorians is opposed to space magic. Yeah, I could see that. That is, I mean, midichlorians is funny then, because this is for those of you just tuning in, this is a throwback to a comment we were making before about how filling in the universe too much causes a bunch more problems than it solves, right? It's giving too many answers. So like midichlorians for the explanation is the Force, whereas you could just be like a wizard did it, and that would be the correct answer forever. Like you didn't have to give midichlorians. The midichlorians of it all is kind of what 40k has gotten itself stuck in, isn't it? Ryan Dunphy says it's almost like they took a photo and said sculpt this, and the sculptor accidentally flipped the photo backwards. That's entirely possible. Free Radio Armageddon says that's why Space Quest is amazing. Space Quest is amazing. And then Mark Langeal says, Ryan, I was thinking the same, that it got flipped digitally by mistake. It's entirely possible. Or, and here's a funny thing. It probably didn't, because the facing of the shoulders is still right, but it's also entirely possible they flipped it during cutting, because things can get flipped during cutting too. But the fact that the shoulders and the legs are the same and the cape's the same, makes me think that it was just on purpose and just did it. Ryan says, I bet some could make a killing purposely doing old school scalps using modern tools. A lot of them are so timeless. There's a company doing that. Hang on. Let's have a look at that right now, because there's literally a company doing that. 80s style Warhammer miniatures. What's it called? No, there's an actual like company. Is it Die Hard Miniatures? Yeah. Old Hammer style sci-fi. Here we go. I got your back, Ryan. There's a whole ass company doing this. And ask and ye shall receive. Yeah, Die Hard Miniatures is basically an 80s style sculpting company. So they do everything from like Hard Biff Side Splitta and the Back Hill Boys, which are literally like old school style orcs. Check out the paint jobs even. Like, look at how awesome those are. And they're done in like the pre-Kev Walker sort of like C-series Warhammer style. To like science fiction stuff. You have Baby Yoda, a K9 unit, bounty bots, but these are just the latest ones. There's a whole, let's go to the sci-fi range so you guys can see the old Hammer stuff. Let's sort by faction, like Void Parasites. These are kind of like Tyrannity stuff. Ooh, there's movies there. Let's go through Chaos. Yeah, so like Mr. Jones the Space Pirate, a space rat. This is definitely like an old school style Chaos Space Marine. A Morbus Zune the Chaos Reaver. Misfits units, so just like some cool mutants. Yeah, they're so cool. I like this guy with this giant chainsaw and gun. But then they do all kinds of like fantasy stuff as well. And the fantasy stuff again is all like in an old style like theme. So yeah, if you're looking for like Rogue Trader-ish stuff, here, let's go to Orcs and Goblins. Let's just do humans. Get out of here. Come on. Oh, this drop down me is driving me crazy. Humans. A TWKE bounty unit. These are all robots for the most part. Yeah, there's the Space Bounty Hunter. Marshal Kovac. How cool is that guy? We got all kinds of like the E-Core unit. These are really nice, actually. I really like these. They almost have like a Mutant Chronicles Warzone feel to them, but I really dig the helmets and the guns. They have like a chunky sort of like they look like Wildcats, or like they look like that era of like Image Comics kind of like dudes. They have like a weird pseudo-modernist to them, like Griefer. Was it Griefer? Griefer? One of my favorite. He was like the Gambit of the Wildcats. I think his name was Grifter. They have kind of like a grifter look to them. And then these bounty hunters. Yeah, there's cool stuff in here. Amazons. Cool, like Necromunda stuff. Yeah, and there's a ton of these things. So, yeah, there's a whole company already doing that. So, Ryan, you're on top of it. What else we got? Nick Denny says, I finally catch this stream. Welcome back, dude. Ryan says, Alternative Armies does it too. Yep. Hybrid Miniatures does that. Who else? Satyr Studio. Yeah, old school Warhammer 40K. Landon Paint says, hi, Ash. First time catching you live. Been catching your channel for years, ever since started doing Rangers of Shadow Deep. Well, I'm glad. Welcome aboard. That's half the time. That's about 5 years ago now. Ignova says, Dyred's great. Tim Prow runs it. Lots of old GW sculptors have done stuff for them too. Yeah, absolutely. And then Liam Fisher says, old school miniatures, I think. They have newer Kev Adams style goblins. Jeanine says, red mask, blonde hair. Yeah, that was Grifter. Tom says it's Doom Guy. If Doom Guy ate Popeye's spinach. And then, yeah, EM4 miniatures as well. Tons of those things. Matt Lentz is here. Been a while. Happy to catch it finally live. Awesome. I'm glad you're here. Let's go and check out some mailbag questions. And then we'll go and check out the new ITS. All right, first mailbag question is from Dan Falk. ITS 16 just dropped. Have you had a chance to go through it? So far, I haven't seen anything surprising or unexpected. We'll know, but we're going to talk about it right now. I just got text from Dan and Owen, actually, as I was on my way over here, from doing the breakfast program for the school. We had 270 kids, by the way, which is a lot. And only one kitchen accident. Some other dad was trying to keep up with me chopping fruits and veggies and nicked himself. But yeah, no, they were texting me and said we should do a tactical awareness episode on it. And so we will. Jeanine says, first off, tell your buddy who makes the Ducky STLs. He probably got a whole bunch of downloads last night because of me. So Mike from Duck Studios. Painter's Discord channel blew up when I showed them the Spearheads train via the Ducks. Oh, it's amazing. Also, big question about the Skirmish. Has there been a game better than Mordheim in executing what a campaign feels like for a group of players? Or is that standard because no one has topped it? I would say before Mordheim, Warhammer Quest. Like, Warhammer Quest, the 99-page RPG book for Warhammer Quest is why you have Mordheim. Like, Quest 97 is a more expansive version of that for where every character has their own adventure that they have afterwards. Because, like, so for instance, in all the character expansion packs for Warhammer Quest, you didn't just get like their items and equipment in their experience tree. You also got the different locations in town that they exclusively had access to, or that they would add to the list of places that you could go. So like the Elf Ranger added like an elf quarter thing that you could like send people to, and like special people you could see in the elf quarter. And so I would say Quest 97 does it better, because Quest 97's is like first you have like the actual like travel time where you can have events back to town. Then you have your arrival at town, what size town it is, how many events you do in town, and then you have to travel back to like a new dungeon. So as far as like meta campaign where like the story's unraveling in between the actual like putting miniatures on a table thing, I think Quest 97 did it the best of anything. I think we owe Quest 97 for Mordheim. And then since then, I think Silver Tower's done it as good, if not better, than Mordheim did. I would say, not to toot my own horn, but I think Last Days does it really, really, really well because of the base construction and like the way that you have to navigate like the politics of the people living in the refuge and stuff too. What else? What else does it like differently than Mordheim? Because the problem with Mordheim was your experience at the end of the game was dictated by how well you did in the game. Right? So like your exploration dice was dictated by how many of your heroes survived. So if you got tabled in the game, you didn't have a fun post game, right? Whereas you could have a fun post game kind of no matter what in other games, just because you went back no matter what, unless you think you were dead, right? So I do think that's an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, Mordheim is I think the best remembered of that. I think Gorkamore did it just as well as Mordheim. I think if you watch the Gorkamore campaign that Jay and I played, like 7-game campaign, which literally ends in my knob, like being beaten up in turns by different members of his gang. Like you don't get that story without, like the gameplay experience didn't dictate the story. It was the nature of Gorkamorka that story happened. And I think there's lots of games out there like Mordheim. I think Mordheim's just accessible because you could play Mordheim with your old 100-year-old fantasy miniatures, no matter what faction you played. Mordheim is kind of like, it's funny because they tried to apply that logic to Warcry and they couldn't make it stick. Because the problem is they turned Warcry into an arena battler and they didn't really commit to doing like a post-game sequence. But yeah, I would say there's lots, and there's lots of other like outside Games Workshop examples too that are fantastic. I think that that like in the indie sphere, I think Frostgraves is fine. I think that Silver Bayonets is really good. Those are both by Joe. Rangers is obviously quite good. Although Rangers is simplified, so you can't tech your characters quite as much because like you level up in a certain way. Yeah, there's lots of them. All right, let's dive back in and see what the chat is saying. Genie says, I got sucked into Gen 13, which was more like a horror genre. Gen 13 was a horror genre, yeah. Nick says, those make look great, but man, I wish Dark Age was still around. Yeah, me too, man. I think Dark Age is one of the saddest stories in wargaming, mostly because it was on such an upswing when it finally got pulled again. And it got pulled for like the most businessy of reasons, and that's nothing wrong with that. But those reasons will never feel good with the consumer, ever. Like, to try and take another stab at Dark Age, you would have to wait 10 more years. Like, and you'd have to fully rebrand it. Like, call it something else. Call it, like, Samaria Reborn or something like that. Like, you couldn't call it Dark Age anymore because it's just... It's such a great setting. It's basically Borderlands before there's Borderlands. Like, it's an abandoned... like, it's literally what the planet... It's Pandora from Borderlands. It's a planet, like, abandoned by the technocracy, basically, that's turned into a complete shithole. Like, it's such an, and then like the story is great too, the way that they like cynically co-opt Christianity to try and like survive. Yeah, I do, but I also miss Dark Age Nick. I think it's fantastic. Alan Nettle says there was a guy on Instagram who did some old school scouts, and there was a Kickstarter for him. I forgot who it was. He's an ex. I know who you're talking about. He's an ex Forge World sculptor, and he did. I showed those to Jay because he did. It wasn't. No, he does the squat ones. It wasn't Ninja Bread. Ninja Bread does the really cool squat minis. I can't remember his name. But yeah, no, because he's the same sculptor that did all of the enforcers for Necromunda. And they're basically poofy sleeve Mohawk scouts, but done in like Primaris scale. And it looks cool as hell. I think those models are fantastic. Yeah, so there's a ton of like good companies out there doing that stuff. We're about to take a look at the new Infinity season, and I don't trust the Google link. I forgot that this thing has an AI now, which makes sense in like the terms of the terms of Infinity. I just don't like that there's an actual like Sibylla AI now. And 5 rules. All right, let's go have a look. So you guys haven't been to the download section for Corvus Belli. Obviously, it's updated quite often. We're going to take a look at the Infinity section. Organized play, and you can grab it right here. This is the ITS rules. So the new one, January 27, 2025, ITS 16. Uncharted Horizons. I like that they put a part 2 on here. So for those of you guys who don't know what the deal is with this, the new edition of the game launched in December, but the season changes over for tournament play, for the official organized play for Infinity in October, typically, September, October. So they had to basically publish like a get you by like draft of these rules, and then they've cut it down now. It's not too surprising, I don't think. It looks like it's pretty much the same as before. The scenario list, I don't see anything super new here. They look all the same. Yeah, there's 20 scenarios. The 5 at the bottom here, so ITS Direct Action, is beginners tournaments. They're straightforward. They're not too like taxing mentally for playing a bunch of games in a day. And they don't tend to have like unclear winners and losers because of technicalities. Like Annihilation is just kill and survive. So you earn points by killing, you earn points by conserving your own guys. You get points by like killing lieutenants and stuff like that. Battleground is holding zones. Cutthroat is killing lieutenants. Superiority is hold zones and push buttons, and then Uplink Center is like a line of buttons across the middle where you're trying to like control them at the end of the game. And then you have Resilience Operations, which is my favorite version, which is the one where you have like a card deck and you have a procedurally generated mission. So we're pushing forward the timeline. Obviously, the humans aren't doing great in this. And it looks like it's slightly cut down from previous seasons, but the story is basically that the last ditch defense of one of the jump gates for the humans against the aliens has fallen, and a bunch of the humans characters, specifically the ones that are like post-humans and post-human creations, which are AIs, the Homerid heroes, Pandora, Patroclus, and Achilles, have all basically been they've changed sides. They've gone to the bad guys, and that's a huge deal. What else we got that's new and different in here? Looks like all this is relatively the same. So for those of you who've never played an Infinity tournament before, Infinity typically runs 3 to 5 missions over 1 to 2 days. So a 1-day tournament will be about three rounds. You know all your missions in advance, and you get to make 2 lists. Both lists have to be legal and from the same faction. Apart from that, they can be entirely different miniatures if you want them to be. And the tournaments get out on things like extras. Now, when you play the game, you're scored in 3 ways. There's your tournament points. Tournament points are going to be by how you won. So if you win, you get 4 points. If you tie, you get 2 points. If you defeat, you get none points. If you get a +1 point for earning 5 more or more objective points, so if you win with 5 or more points, you get +1 for a 5. And defensive bonus, if you lose by 2 or less, your defeat can turn into a single point, so you don't get 0 in there. So basically, like, you get to add something to your total. That's the first one. Then second tiebreak is going to be total objective points over the course of the tournament. And third tie point is total victory points. And victory points in this game isn't what you killed of your opponent's stuff. It's how much of your force survived every game. So your victory points is like, how good a general am I at keeping my dudes alive? Some general tokens, general rules for like land and terrain. These are not required tournament layouts, by the way. These are just, here's some examples of what a table could look like. And the reason they're showing it is they're showing you can do it side to side straight on, or you can do it at an angle across the table. And both of these table layouts are equally valid. They're not saying lay out your terrain like this. Special rules for interacting with civilians look pretty much the same. Case fact means picking up one of your own guys and getting them out of there. Long service, journalist, and border skirmish. Okay, so they kept this from last round. Some of the missions have what's called an exclusion zone. So like imagine you have infiltrators, you have guys who can deep strike like in a 40k sense. An exclusion zone is a part of the table where that basically you've been ordered not to go into that zone because of whatever reason. It could be there's civilians in there, it's super dangerous, there's air cover keeping you from dropping in, whatever it is. The border skirmish is allowing you to, so parachutists have a rule where they can come in by just walking on a table edge because they've jumped in somewhere else and then walked to the battle. The border skirmish allows you to, if you could jump in normally, you can use the edge of the exclusion zone as if it was the edge of the table for walking on, which is kind of handy. Other extras, Soldiers of Fortune, where you get mercenary troops, escalation tournament. You play different rounds of different sizes. I like that. First round will be 200 to 150. Second round is 300 to 250. Third round's 400 to 350, and you must have different lists for each one. I like that a lot. Free game, so you can have as many models as you want. Owen's favorite is free game because that just breaks the game immediately by having too many guys. Direct action is you use the direct action mission tournaments, reinforcements. All players must use reinforcements. Reinforcements are you play a smaller game, but guys drop in later on. You have a separate reinforcement army list. And then resilience ops is use the card deck and don't use missions. These all look pretty much the same to me. All right, these are new tactical support. So this is the biggest, newest thing. Each scenario specifies the number of tactical support options the player has. In ITS games, the selection of tactical support options must always be done using the tactical objectives deck. Players must draw their tactical support options after choosing one of the 2 army lists. Each player must remove all tactical cards without a symbol from the tactical objectives deck. So King of the Hill, Central Controls, Z Domination, and Domination. Each player must shuffle their own tac deck in front of their opponent and draw the number of cards specified. Tactical support options are open information. The trooper can choose to receive a tactical support option, must always be one of the models deployed in the table. So if you get, so each symbol basically, one of them is a reroll mod skill for the single use. Basically, if you fail a roll, you can reroll it for that card. The player gains an automatic success when rolling for a skill with a scenario label. So if you're trying to like push a button, you can do it before making the roll. A specialist troop can reroll against a scenario thing. At the end of deployment in initiative order, the players choose which specialist troops from their army has this effect. Oh, interesting. So that one you have to apply to somebody. Wildcard, the player can pick any result from the chart. When tactical support cards are drawn, that's cool. Specialist, so basically when you draw the wild card, it can be any of them. A specialist trooper, the player has the sensor skill. At the end of the deployment, you have to choose somebody. Just give them a sensor. So you can sensors are used to like reveal like camo troops and stuff. And a trooper with this has the specialist operator, so you can give someone specialist after deployment. Neat. All right, cool. Neat add-ons. Give someone a med kit. Give someone a gizmo kit. Cancel an enemy tactical support option. So basically, at the end of the deployment phase, after you've assigned all these cards, one of them can be canceled. Get a Blitzen. Get an adhesive launcher, or the lieutenant gets +1 whip for the initiative roll. Cool. Yeah, those are handy, and those are all going to be tied to the tac deck. So some cool symbols for little bonus like sweeties that you get during the course of the game. A little more chaos in the system. And then we're into missions. I'm not going to bother going mission by mission. We'll do a tactical awareness on this. And I think that's really the biggest change, because other than that, it's going to be, it's just going to be the same missions and resilience ops. So free cards. It doesn't look like we get a new mission this season, but I'm fine with that. We can play with the old ones for a new edition of N5. There it is. So new, I guess, tactical support option cards getting added in. And that's about it. Which I think is fine. What else we got in the chat? Alan Wong says, I like Frostgrave campaigns better than Mordheim. Lichlord and Maze of Malcor are super fun. I think, I think you're right, Alan. I think the best campaign systems, like from like an experience, from a memorable point of view, are always going to be either the procedurally generated one that you play with people who like a narrative, because they're gonna use the prompts basically in that procedure to tell a story amongst their miniatures, or one where there is a preset narrative and anybody can enjoy that because you're just uncovering the story together, kind of like in real time. And Lichlord and Maze of Malcor both have fantastic stories. Like, I can still remember Owen and Mike and I fighting on the top of the castle before it fell to the sky trying to defeat the Lichlord. And, like, the inevitable betrayal of Owen as he died screaming on that, because he'd killed everybody for the entire campaign. And then we just left him to die in a castle falling out of the sky. Yes, his inevitable betrayal led to our inevitable betrayal when it was all said and done, which was fantastic. But yeah, I think the ones that are story driven, you either need the right group and good prompts, or you need to have a good story, and then anybody can enjoy it too. Matt Olson says, the chat saying tease your newly penned game project. No. Liam Fishwick says, War Guy's big problem is it's all about selling the TM terrain. Yeah, I think its big problem is that, like, okay, so here's my opinion of Mordheim. One, I think the game started off something that it isn't now. I think it started off as a project bigger in scope and more RPG and got cut way back into being just this like light arena battler. And then two, I think they like intentionally said it can't be like Warhammer. It can't be like Mordheim. It needs to be its own thing. And they forgot that the first rule of selling miniatures is you want to sell miniatures that people want to use in their other projects. And like weird foot trees or hand trees, like they're cool. Like on their face, I love how weird all the Warcry shit's been. I love the weird gangs of the 8 points thing that they did. I love all the miniatures for those gangs. But no one wants to be the group of people that amputate their limbs and cuts their faces off. Like that's too much for an entry-level skirmish game and an entry-level game that you're making. Like you just didn't plan this right. Like you missed. You made something that would have been great during like the punk rock Realms of Chaos times of the 80s. And for a bunch of kids just getting into Warhammer, his parents are footing the bill. Warcry was not going to land. If it had been monsters and humans on the mean streets of Hammerhall, I think it would have been great. And I think that's what we're going to see the next time around. Because I think they've realized like people want to buy things that they can use in their Dungeons & Dragons games, that they can use in their other fantasy games, that they can use all over the place. And that's never going to change. And so using things you can multi-purpose and having things that are a little bit more recognizably fantasy, I think is just it's just good marketing. It's just good business planning. You can't go too weird and expect it to like pop. You can go weird later on, but the core experience needs to be like heroes and villains. Like it just has to be. You can't be villains on villains or slightly less psychopathic psychopaths fighting psychopaths. Like you need to have some like dichotomy and something a little more crowd pleasing, I think. Brian Cran's off to pick up the kids. See you, man. Zug1974 says, I just made it. Did I miss the part where we talk about the new Fallout Factions rulebook? No, but that is in the news. and that is a thing that we need to talk about. Okay, so Fallout Factions hardcover rulebook. This is something that Jay and I are super excited about because it looks like it's going to both expand and put things together in one place. And of course, Modifius make lovely rulebooks. And therefore and also, I don't know if you guys remember this, but like, it was so nice of them to put me on the cover of their game. Because if you guys don't remember this is what the cover of the game looks like. It was super nice of them to put me and Jay on the cover of the game. Like, I don't know why Chris did that, but I owe him, I guess, for having done so. Yeah, so obviously the Nuka World Source, it's super nice. These are some of like the nicest plastic miniatures. And again, a great like 1-player starter set. Or 2-player starter set, because it's got like everything you need to play in it. It passes the Christmas morning test quite nicely. But let's talk about this rulebook, which should be in the news. Is there not news here? Is this the news? Exclusive first look? No. Oh, you don't have it on your own website? Okay, come on, Modifius. Let's just go Fallout Factions hardcover rulebook. I hate that I can't just immediately find this. There we go. There we go. Is this the news thing? Show me the news thing. Nope, that's free PDF. You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me, Smalls. Fallout Factions hardcover rulebook. I saw the news article too. Welcome to Quick Start. Battle Nuka World Starter Set. News? Maybe I just put in news. Or hit the news tab. I guess not. It looks like maybe it was in their newsletter, on their blog. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. It is. I saw the news somewhere. Obviously, I'm not alone. This isn't a Mandela effect thing because somebody else saw it too. John Ashton says there are at least 2 games or supplements I'm waiting for, one being the Battletech Mercenaries and that Gundam Assemble game, if only for the miniatures. I'm just dubious about the game system. I mean, it'll be what it'll be. I think I wouldn't put too much stock in it being a huge swing because I don't think they know what their market is. I think it's more of an experiment than anything else. Malev says, I just started my Hope Eternal Stargrave solo campaign. I'm right in the middle of Mission 1. That's a great game. Hope Eternal is a really good campaign as well. Altranek says they've committed to this year and stated the box kits that were in a state of tooling. Ibis rides the faction book arrives before Q3, so it's going to happen later then. That's fine. Gene says, I completely agree with you about the Gundam game. Models in the game will be fun. Whether the game is good or not, it'll be Gundam Wing, Chibi, who cares? Malev says, Warcry's big problem is that they lost the plot. It should have stayed in the 8 points instead of shifting into AOS Light. 100%. I think they didn't know what to do with it. I think they had a plan that they changed. And then when it didn't land the way they wanted it to, they were like, well, then obviously we just need to make it this. But then that wasn't what people wanted either because it was just a light arena battler. And then they're like, it's oscillating, right? You can't just jerk the wheel of the plane back and forth, the stick back and forth, and not expect your plane to fall to the air at some point. Aaron Beecher says, it's Kill Team for Age of Sigmar. I don't think it is, though. I'll be honest. I think Kill Team honestly has more character, even in so much as the fact that, like, just think about, like, the portrayal of the warbands. You have these, like, symbol-driven, you kind of have to interpret the language of the symbols, point values, you make your own list, granular experiences, where it's kind of like more of a light war game. In Kill Team, every specialist has like a story. Like, I do think Kill Team is slightly more narrative, just in so much as the story of the team is the theme of the team, and the specialists inside the team kind of expand upon that story. And there's just like there's more sort of like, there's more character to them. You know what I mean? Like all the rules for the halflings, for instance, feed into that idea that these are like underdog, scrappy snipers who have to like cheat to win. Like, they're Ewoks basically in 40K. Whereas in Warcry, like, playing as my iron golems, what's the identity of those guys? They have high toughness. They have an ogre. They have 6 abilities, some of which kind of tell a story, but most of which don't. Like, Kill Team, I think, yeah. Oh, no, the freedom, definitely. And sorry, Barry Shepard at the end here says, Kill Team locked you into the story of the team. Workout lets you tell the story you want with the models you want. 100%. Absolutely. I think the difference there is that you need to have some prompt. There needs to be something in between in Warcry, or you have to be the type of gamer that wants to do that. Otherwise, the default for like an AOS player coming to Warcry is, oh, it's an army game with a point system. I'm just going to take the best things and play. Because they don't actually care about anything other than that. They're going to import the Age of Sigmar experience onto Warcry, and I think that's why Warcry struggled, is people tried to play Warcry like it was Age of Sigmar, as opposed to it having this like identity and being able to feed in. And that's why, honestly, that's why Kill Team's the third pillar now, man. Kill Team's selling better than everything else at Games Workshop that's not 40k in Age of Sigmar. It is an absolute home run as far as like selling. Aaron Beecher says, does Kill Team do progress, though? We always played with the narrative progression stuff, and that gave me the old school Necromunda feels. So Kill Team is adding that in as its own separate book, apparently. It's going to be its own whole thing. Also, Kill Team, less than $100. A competitive Warhammer band, $300. Especially for the old Chaos ones where you had to buy the box multiple times. If you wanted 2 ogres, you had to buy like $200 for the stuff, basically. Evil Bear Skirmish says, I'm still enjoying Lunar, and love the way the game is growing. Lunar's fantastic. Jay and I had a ton of fun with Lunar. I'm really excited for Hametsu. I need to find someone to do Hametsu with me because I'm very excited about that game. Malev says, Kill Team, each model is effectively a specialist with kit and story and a purpose. Warcry bands are simply scaling guys. The leader's just the best guy. There were sometimes more than one leader too, Malev. Like, credit where credit's due. I think the new edition of Warcry is the best edition they've done of Warcry. And where it started and where it is now is very different. And the campaign system for Warcry is infinitely better than the original one, which was just like, you get rerolls. Like, it was a nothing burger of a system before that. And it's moving in a good direction. And I think the 4th edition of Warcry is where we're going to see it turn into something more like what everybody who plays Warcry wants it to be. That isn't a guy who's playing Warcry with his friend who's excited about Warcry using the miniatures from his AOS army and just playing it like it's AOS. Because I think that person was way more common in Warcry than dedicated Warcry players, if that's what if that's what my gut tells me is right. Tom Robinson says, I'm interested in what the presumed new edition of Warcry this year is like. I think it's going to be Hammerhall or something like it. It'll be a city. They're going to do a city. They've learned their lesson about the weird shit, man. I guarantee you they have. I guarantee the stacks of stuff that didn't sell from the Gur one is going to be them being like, well, you know what sold real well? Cursed City. You know what we should just make miniatures for? Something like a Cursed City. Something like a city that got hit by a comet. Something like a place where you got to go hunting warpstone. Like, it's not hard, guys. Like, just read the room or just do Hammerhall. You know what I mean? Do like Streets of Hammerhall. Something like that. All right. I'm going to go double check the mailbag and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, we got one more. Alan Wong says, Grimdark atmosphere has been on a tear, like Trench Crusade and my series, but do you think we've reached peak Grimdark? Are people going to want more happy stories like False Post-Apocalypse? Or, given the world in pop culture, can we get grimmer, darker? So here's the thing. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a swing back to more traditional Gothic horror. Because you know what's not fun anymore? Dystopian horror. You know what we're not going to get in the next couple of years? A new RoboCop or a new Judge Dredd. Because that's not going to feel like entertainment is, I think, the real thing. Like, when dystopia gets way closer to reality, people don't want to engage with it as their, oh geez, what happened? Not supposed to be like that. My God, I made the chat go away. It's because the patron questionnaire got popped back in by accident. I think what happens is when dystopia turns back into reality a little bit, we have a problem with dystopia feeling a different way. I don't know, go like this. That should be right. What do we do here? How did that happen? Oh my God, everything, the chat's gone away. Why has the chat gone away? This is killing me here. You should be on this window, right? Because you're not this one. You should be on this one. I made the chat disappear and it's bothering me now. It's fine. Oh, it's because it timed out. Oh, weird. Okay. Did my internet go down? No, my internet hasn't gone down, has it? I'm still connected. I'm still streaming. Okay, yeah, it says it's still streaming. Weird. Okay, that wasn't. I thought that was me going to the mailbag. But what actually happened was, I think my internet blipped and that screen timed out. And there we go. Now it's back. Weird. People talking about BSS Blacksite Studios. Yes, they make Hametsu and Void Cowboys and Lunar and all of those games. Okay, we fixed that. Melissa says, chat, I'm lost in the white room. Yeah, it looks like that screen timed out for some reason, and all of a sudden the chat like burped out, but I thought that was because I was in the mailbag trying to read Alan's mailbag question. It wasn't. It was just the internet being bad, which is fine. I think that's the last of the mailbag questions, and we're running up on time here. So I'm going to go through the chat one more time and talk about what's coming up this week, and then we're going to dive into the future of what's happening. Gene says, because we're in a dystopia currently, yeah, horror's not so great. Jim Kerman says, do you say there's a Kill Team narrative book coming? That's my assumption, is that they're going to make a book for... So, like, they launched Kill Team. They launched it with their tournament card pack, which I'm sure some people are playing with. I don't think people really super care about it. I think people are playing more... I think people are just playing more crit ops / kill grade games than are playing with attack ops. Just because attack ops are kind of burdensome. And then each of these expansions so far adds like a narrative element and like a new game style by expanding the Volcus terrain set, right? So I imagine when that's all said and done, we're going to get some kind of end of year, here's your whole Volcus terrain set, here's a story to tell with it kind of thing. Because that's what I would do to end the season. If I was trying to sell something to people who'd already bought a whole bunch of stuff over the course of the year, that feels like the right thing to do, and so that would be my bet, basically, is that that's what's going to happen. And the future of Kill Team, I'm sure, is bright because I think it's exceeding their expectations at the moment too. So I think we're gonna see more of that happen. Everyone's just yelling about being in the chat. Gene says no one's playing World War III games because it's not such a gaming abstract anymore. Nope, it sure isn't. Jez Hunt says, is this dystopian film or the news? Yeah. Thomas Robinson says, I think Scream meta horror is going to raise its head again. I think you're probably right. Because we do get cynical during times like these, and during cynical times that like meta narrative pops, like deconstructions come about. I wonder when we get the first deconstructed miniature game, which is a miniature game about miniature gamers playing miniature games. And all the different classes or different types of miniature gamers. It's entirely possible that that's going to happen. Josh says, yeah, I'd rather have an escapist setting. Real world's a tad too depressing because it's too real. Adrian says, I'm boomering into the void. I don't know if I'm boomering into the void. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how much my gas costs in the next couple of weeks, and then after February 19th, we'll see how much eggs cost, and I'll see how I feel about, watching RoboCop again. I don't think it's gonna be too exciting. Just says, I think that's why Herding 28 got a blip a few years ago. Oh, entirely possible. Lamash just says, I see a lot of cold reactions and speculation about Cathay being brand new army in the old world from fantasy veterans. Do you think that parallels the introduction of Tau in 40K? Wasn't it? I think it's just something they've already made. Do you want me to get real cynical here for a second? I'm pretty sure that they made that. I'm pretty sure they made Cathay as the original launch army, and they were planning on launching it. I wonder if they've scrubbed it, because it was on Warhammer Community way back in the day, and I wonder if they scrubbed it. I wonder if they scrubbed the Cathay stuff from Warhammer Community, because they had a whole. Yeah, it looks like it's scrubbed from Warhammer Community, but at the Old World roadmap, they showed like a bunch of stuff. Where is it? No, I'm gonna block you because I don't want to go on spiky bits. I'm not doing that. Warhammer Community. Here we go. So this looks like this is from February of last year, when they stopped pushing this. And these images are all from Warhammer Total War, but when they were doing the lead up basically to Total Total War 3, they were posting like Road to the Old World before that. And I wonder if it's in here. If the pictures of Cathay are in here. Because Cathay's in Total War 3. Cathay, Total War 3. I have a suspicion. Yeah, here it is. I have like a suspicion. It's a playable race in Total Warhammer 3. I have a suspicion that that they just ran out of time. That it was it was originally intended that they were going to do the Grand Army of Cathay as one of the two armies in this, and they just ran out of time. And so they didn't. It was going to be Kislev and Grand Cathay, and they just ran out of time and didn't do it. And now they're just saving it for like a later release. Why can't I make any of these images look good? Total War, Grand Cathay. Here we go. So I can show you guys the art. Yeah, there's the trailer. Because all of this, I'm pretty sure, was on Warhammer Community at one point in part of the roadmap to the future of the old world, right? And like, then they just scrubbed it. And yeah, here's Kislev, because Kislev was in there too. That's right. And the Ice Queen of Kislev. I wonder if I can pull that up. Ice Queen. Whoops. Ice Queen Kislev concept art, because I guarantee all of that stuff is like saved around here somewhere, because like all of this was at one point on Warhammer Community. They had tons of this stuff posted. Yeah, Warhammer Community, it's got the tag, there it is. The Old World Ice Guard of Kislev, posted March 23rd by Reese on Frontline Gaming. Yeah. I knew I wasn't crazy. This was definitely on Warhammer Community at some point. So whether they've scrubbed it or not, like, it was definitely a plan at some point. I guarantee that work's probably already done. Because like, if they have digital aspects, digital assets sculpted, all they have to do is tool the molds and put stuff into production, and that's it. You're done, right? So like, I almost guarantee this stuff's already made from the point of like, no, we've already made all the like the sculpts and stuff like that. We've done our 3D modeling. Like, we just need to cut the molds and make packaging and do the art and the layout and stuff like that, and we're finished. So I wouldn't be surprised if Cathay and Kislev was like a thing that we see later on this year. Derek Gehring says they 100% didn't scrub it. Oh, if it's not, I just couldn't find it on Warhammer Community. I was doing a quick Google. It wasn't the first search turn, so who knows? And maybe it'll come out. Tom says, I know they scrubbed it. I think they scaled back expectations from the OG release, so they were like peeling on the old kits. Well, I think that was the plan. I honestly think that what happened was the timeline changed, the work got done a different way, and what started off as like big swing, bring back Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and the excitement of that got scaled back into, no, guys, let's make sure we don't overinvest in this. Let's see if there's an appetite for these old model kits. Let's repackage everything. Let's get half of the armies functioning and working and make army books for them. We'll, roll out some old kits. Like a bunch of those dwarf kits, I'm pretty sure, like old concepts that got resculpted or like just put into production. And then now they know there's an appetite for it. They need to plan future releases. So this stuff just gets rolled back out of the hangar, basically. Evil Bear Skirmish says, I just want big hat chaos dwarfs. Who doesn't want big hat chaos dwarfs? So they're giant blunderbusses. I mean, you got big hat chaos dwarves in Blood Bowl. The Blood Bowl chaos dwarves, and I don't know if you've seen them, but Mike painted them for our Blood Bowl games, were fantastic. All right, I think we're done. Yeah, we are. We're done. Derek says, you look at the pic in the last coming up photo of the last reveal video. The pic is from a Cathay pic they released. Oh, that makes sense. So this week, what do we got going on? Well, I got Jay in tomorrow for more of the classic kill team that you love. We got a classic kill team game coming up on Thursday. We have the Indie Hour, on some extremely, and a Let's Play on an extremely cool, 6 to 15 mil game called Full Spectrum Dominance, which you guys are going to get to see if you guys are watching this. If you're not patrons, you haven't already seen it. If you are a patron, you've already seen it because it went up as a patron preview last week. So you got to watch that game get played on top of a whole bunch of other things, which is very exciting. And yeah, you get it all a week early. So big thanks to Bob for making that happen, and to Full Spectrum Dominance for, just letting us see the miniatures. And then later on this week, I'm heading to Calgary to go see Owen and Dan for Tactical Awareness's yearly get together, where we go to Edmonton and play in Colder Than Carbonite, which is going to be an absolute shit show because no one knows what they're doing. It's going to be great. I'm taking the easiest to remember thing ever. And if I die in a snowstorm like I almost did last year, then it's been great knowing y'all. But that's my weekend. So recording that, and then hitting the road for Calgary later on in the week. We get the Indie Hour coming up on Wednesday. It's looking real likely it's going to be Doom, Magos Buer's $14.99 Doom. Malev, correct me in the chat. I think it's $18.99, $16.99, something. $14.99 Doom. It's a grimdark game from Magus Buer. It looks really, really cool. Tons of cool miniatures. Our own Malev, who's in the chat right now, painted a bunch of them. And you can see them on his Instagram, I'm pretty sure right now. He did a great job photographing them too. So as of course, this is the Friends and Family thing. The patrons have picked that for our Indie Hour recording this week. So when the Indie Hour for Full Spectrum Dominance and 2 more secret games goes up, you'll get to see the, if you're a patron, you'll get to see the recording for $14.99 Doom. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. $14.90 Doom. I don't know why I keep saying 99. $14.90 Doom. There it is in the chat. And those are the last 2 recordings for this week. Jay coming in, Indie Hour, bunch of videos coming up later on in the week for you guys to watch, bunch of reviews for me to do. You guys get to watch as well for this weekend. And I think that's it. So thanks for joining, guys, for joining this most recent of FREEPISODEs. If you're not a patron, thank the patrons for enjoying the bounty of their work. And then, of course, if you are patrons, we'll be back together on Wednesday for this. And Ash said, I didn't badger us into voting for it, so you can at least remember the name. I didn't badger you guys into voting for it. I guilted you guys into saying that because we all love Malev, it would be wrong of you not to vote for it. So emotionally manipulating you isn't entirely the same as badgering you into it, but I understand that the energy is mostly the same. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. To my patrons, I'll see you all on Wednesday for the Indie Hour. And then to Owen and Dan, I'll see you guys out there, of course, in Calgary out west next week. Come say hi if you're at Colder Than Carbonite. Until next week, happy wargaming.